welcome the Deputy Ambassador of the United States to Armenia, Mr. Rafika, who has been serving for the United States Embassy in Armenia for 1 year now, and is very familiar with our problems. We have just a little talk before. He has been serving also in Moscow when he was a cultural affairs responsible in American Embassy in France. He is Egyptian by nation. He has a very interesting biography, very interesting education, being a biologist, and also he holds a degree in French literature, which gives him leverage in thinking, and I think also not only in thinking but also in doing. So welcome, Mr. Mansura, and our students, graduates, the chair of the dean of the Institute of Law and Policy, Mrs. Larissa Asatrian, who is the first Armenian ombudsman, or it's in English ombudswoman. Ombudswoman. We are very proud of her, and also we have the chiefs of departments of international policy, even philosophy department. Dr. Professor Galikian is here. So a very qualified auditorium, I must say, and so be careful with them. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Здесь. И очень рад быть с вами сегодня. I will spare you my bad Russian, but I'm really delighted to be here with you. I do realize that this is one of the most prestigious institutions of higher learning in Armenia. And I do know that some, if not many of you, are interested in a career in international relations or possibly diplomacy. And I imagine that you are very familiar not only with the Armenian model, but also the Russian model. So I thought that maybe my value added today would be to share a bit with you about the American model, the one that I'm more familiar with. Maybe you could compare and contrast, see what you have in common, what you have different with that model. So I will tell you a little bit about how Washington selects its diplomats. And then I will try to tell you a little bit also about the priorities of the US Embassy here in Armenia. Does that sound good to you? Yeah? Okay. I see a lot of smiley faces. Do I have ketchup on my face? let me know. Okay. You might find this very surprising. Chances are you're not even going to believe me, and you're likely to go and check it later today, but Washington chooses its diplomats in a very peculiar way. You don't even need a university degree to become a diplomat, which is probably unlike many countries. In many countries where I've worked, just to let you know, Armenia is the 9th country where I've worked in the past 20 years. Not only do you need a university degree, but oftentimes you need an advanced degree or a degree that's specialized in political science or international relations, so the kind of field of study that you are studying right now. In the United States, you don't even need a bachelor's degree to start with. So there are 2 requirements to take what we call the Foreign Service exam, the Diplomatic Corps exam. One is you must be a US citizen. That makes sense, right? And the second one is you must be between the ages of 21 and 59 and a half. So as you can tell, it's a very wide range. So these are the only 2 requirements to take the Foreign Service exam, and that exam is free. That's on one hand. On the other hand, it's a very selective process. Becoming a US diplomat is much more selective than, let's say, going to Harvard. Because Harvard University, on average, it admits about 7% of the applicant pool. Whereas the US Foreign Service admits every year anywhere between 1 to 2% of the applicants. And basically, the passing grade is predetermined by the hiring needs of the Foreign Service. So As the rector mentioned, I majored in biology and French literature, which I think is laughable, right? Because they have nothing to do with diplomacy. And moreover, I went to medical school after that. And it was while I was in medical school that I decided to just take the Foreign Service exam, believing that I would never pass it. And you know, in life, oftentimes it's easier to do something when you feel that you have absolutely nothing to lose, right? Because if you have something to lose, then there is a risk, there is a cost. If you have nothing to lose, it's much easier. It's liberating in a way. So I decided to take the Foreign Service exam while I was in medical school, as I said, convinced that I would never pass it, and to my own surprise, I passed. So I had this quite difficult decision to make between a career in medicine, which is quite lucrative in the United States. Out of all professions in the United States, probably physicians earn the most money, or a career in diplomacy. And without hesitation, I chose diplomacy because for me, that was the American dream. You may conclude from my name that I am not exactly fifth generation American. I was actually born outside of the United States, moved to the US when I was 15, went to medical school when I was 22, and then I became a diplomat when I was 23. I was a US citizen for only 2 years. I became a US citizen when I was 21, when I joined the Foreign Service. So for me, it was a great honor to be able to represent the United States abroad, and that's why I made this decision to abandon a career in medicine and join the Foreign Service. So what I'm sharing with you is quite an atypical way of joining the diplomatic corps, but it's very typical in America because we really believe in diversity in America. When I say that word diversity, I am not limiting it to color of skin or religion or ethnic background. I really mean it in its widest, most diverse sense of the word. We consider that diversity in itself is a great source of wealth for our country, and it's something that we seek in our candidates. We seek people who represent the United States of America in its diversity. And I will tell you that in the 20 years that I've been a diplomat, every time I go back to the State Department in Washington, I'm quite struck by how increasingly the people that I see at the State Department look like the people I see outside in the streets of Washington or Los Angeles, which is where I'm from, or Iowa or Detroit. And so I would say that that's a positive evolution in the US Foreign Service over the past quarter century or so. So what happens to you when you are selected as a US diplomat? You go to Washington, and then they put you in a class with other fellow young diplomats, and you get a lot of workshops, a lot of lectures for the first 5 weeks. A lot of people come and talk to you, talk at you. And then you get your first assignment. And in theory, your first 2 assignments are overseas. That's usually the way we do it because we want to make sure that the person can serve overseas because you have joined the Foreign Service. And on average, American diplomats spend 2/3 of their careers abroad and 1/3 of their careers in Washington. That's on average. I have spent more of my career abroad than most. You get an assignment, and once you get that assignment, you start 2 forms of training. One is language training, and the other one is tradecraft training. So there are 1 of 5 jobs that you're going to get as an American diplomat. We have 5 specialties, we call them cones. You could be a political officer, an economic officer, public diplomacy, management, or, no, that's part of public diplomacy. So it's political, econ, public diplomacy, management, and consular, right? These are the 5 specialties that you can choose. And so that's the tradecraft. You know, if you get a political job, then you're going to go for political training, etc. And then there is the language issue, right? I would suggest that when you go home, you Google something called the Foreign Service Institute FSI, the Foreign Service Institute. It's basically a university, like this one, that's exclusively for American diplomats. It's located in Arlington, Virginia. And there, the US government teaches about 100 different languages, depending on where you're going to go. And all the teachers are native speakers of that language. So, depending on your job and the level of linguistic proficiency that's required for your job, you will be directed to one of those languages. So you cannot say, oh, I want to study French because I've always wanted to learn French. That's not the idea. The idea is a very pragmatic one to serve the needs of your assignment. So you do language training and you do tradecraft. And then you go on to your first assignment. Your second assignment is also overseas, as I mentioned. And the first 5 years of your existence as a US diplomat, you are what we call untenured. And you have 5 years to make tenure. Are you familiar with this word, tenure, T-E-N-U-R-E? Basically the idea, like a university professor, once you make tenure, you cannot be fired unless it's a really grave reason. So all US diplomats are hired on a conditional basis, and you have these 5 years to make tenure. And if you do, then you will probably have a long career ahead of you. So I've had the pleasure of serving in Haiti, Italy, Russia, Libya, Algeria, Iraq, France, obviously Washington, and I'm now the Deputy Chief of Mission here in Yerevan. Is this enough background about how the US Diplomatic Corps work? Would you like to know a little bit about what do American diplomats actually do in these 5 cones? Is that of interest to you? At least those of you who are still awake, because I have managed to put some people to sleep already. So for those of you who are still awake, political officers and economic officers, their work is quite similar. You could think of it as a combination of a lawyer and a journalist. You are a lawyer in the sense that you try to advance the economic policies or the political decisions of your country. You're also a journalist in the sense that you report back to Washington on political developments or economic developments in the country where you're serving. Management are the people who are in charge of the budget, who are in charge of housing, who are in charge of motor pool, who basically make the embassy building function. That's management. Public diplomacy, that's actually the specialty that I chose, right? Public diplomacy is divided, big picture, into the cultural field, and the press field. The cultural field involves all of the cultural programming, but it also involves all of the educational programming that the US Embassy does in any country overseas. So that's student exchanges, that's professional exchanges, like the Fulbright program, which you may have heard about, the Humphrey, the Flex, the International Visitors Leadership Program. So all of these exchanges between the United States and any country in the world is run out of the cultural section of public diplomacy. And then, as you can well imagine, the press section, it deals with the media. There is also a person who serves as the spokesperson of the US Embassy abroad. Because not everyone, even if you are an American diplomat, not everyone is allowed to speak on behalf of the US government abroad. Usually that's reserved for the ambassador and the spokesperson, who's usually a public diplomacy officer. And then finally, the consular section does 3 things. It does non-immigrant visas, so tourist visas, right? Anyone who wants to go to the United States for a few weeks, come back. Student visas. It also does immigrant visas, so what's usually referred to as a green card. And then it does what we call American Citizen Services, right? It's in charge of the American citizens who might get sick, wind up in jail, die in a foreign country. As you can well imagine, that's a very important duty for any embassy overseas. That's in general what American diplomats do abroad. As far as what does the US Embassy tend to focus on here in Armenia, I will share with you the 4 priorities that Ambassador Mills, my ambassador, has here in Armenia. It's anti-corruption, moving from aid to trade, expanding the economic and the commercial relationship between the United States and Armenia. It's the development of civil society and promotion of human rights. And the fourth goal of Ambassador Mills is basically to do outreach and try to explain U.S. foreign policy to local audiences. So these are the four priorities that the ambassador is focused on here in Armenia. I've probably spoken enough, and I see a lot of smiles on your faces. I will take this as a good sign. So why don't we open it up for discussion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for representing the U.S. model of becoming a diplomat. It's very interesting. From the U.S. point of view, to know how this process actually occurs. While listening to your presentation, I came to an idea came to my mind whether there are any cooperation in this field with the Armenian, the Diplomatic School of Armenia here, which is one of the main institutions to prepare diplomats in order to maybe exchange the models or to implement mutual cooperation and to share the U.S. model of preparing the future diplomats. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I will tell you that I've been here for almost a year, and when I wanted to speak about this topic, the most obvious place would be the Armenian Diplomatic Academy. And we reached out to them, and I said that I would be glad to go and share the American model and exchange. I think they only accept speakers during a certain period of the year, so I'm waiting for that period to occur, and I will be delighted to exchange and learn from the Armenian model. But I will tell you that exchange between Armenia and the United States is not limited to government work, because you have a very rich and diverse diaspora in the United States. I come from Orange County, California, which is about 1 hour south of Glendale. So I've always been exposed to Armenians. I went to school with Armenians. And the Armenian diaspora, whether they are Armenian Armenians or Persian Armenians or Lebanese Armenians, have been in the United States for a long time, and they have enriched our society and our culture in many ways. We are grateful for the contribution of Armenians to the United States as a nation and as a culture. And there are many foundations that run programs. I will tell you, I'm impressed by the number of senior Armenian government officials who got their master's degree in the United States, and especially at Fletcher, right? So there is a fine tradition, and it's amazing the positions that they occupy in Armenian government. I obtained my master's degree. So once I finally decided to become a seriozny человек, which took many years, right? Когда я решил стать серьезным человеком, right? And that's one of the 6 cases in Russian, lovely. I went to the National War College, and I got a master's degree in national security. And the National War College, which is the most prestigious institution in the United States for that kind of study, admits only 20 diplomats a year, but it admits 35 international fellows. So we bring in 35 international fellows at the level of colonels, and we put them through the same exact curriculum that we put American diplomats and American military officers. That's the kind of transparency that we like to promote in the American model. And we see how, they see how Americans are optimistic, pessimistic, how they are critical of our own system as well. There is an increasing number of Armenians who are going through the war colleges. Now, obviously, there is always the tradition of the Russian education model, which you perfectly exemplify here, but Armenians are also turning west, and that's good.
Any We also have a lot of alumni of this university participating later on in Fulbright and Humphrey.
That's fantastic.
Muskie, when we had it back in the
That's
early 80s.
you know, as someone who, I did not go to Harvard, I did not go to Yale, and that's an important network that you can develop, but there are many networks that you can develop in your life, and the Fulbright, the Flex, any of those programs will provide you with a basis of friendships and contacts for the rest of your lives that will prove to be very, very valuable to you.
Thank you for your lecture. How in America the Minister of Foreign Affairs does choose the country of your assignment? Because in Armenia we know some cases when people with zero knowledge of French, for example, went to France, and people who excellently know French were sent to other countries.
I am not here to tell you that the American system is perfect. But let me share with you maybe one or two things that I really admire about the American system. The word meritocracy comes to mind. And for me, that's just the opposite of corruption. Once a system is dominated by corruption, people tend to lose hope because they know that it will always be the son of, the daughter of, the niece, the nephew of, who will get the job, who will get the promotion, who will get the assignment. As I mentioned to you, I'm a humble immigrant, came to the US at 15, became a US citizen at 21, became an American diplomat at 23. They only admitted about 1% of the candidates my year. So I obviously did not have any kind of connection, right? I did not know Senator X or Congressman Y. There are two key things for you to advance as an American diplomat. There are your evaluations that your supervisor will write every year about you, and these will get you promotions, but they will not get you jobs. What will get you jobs in the American system is your corridor reputation. Are you a yeller? Are you a screamer? What kind of manager are you? Do you treat people right? There is no shortage of intelligent people in the diplomatic corps, whether it's the Armenian diplomatic corps, the Italian diplomatic corps, or the American diplomatic corps. But I think that interpersonal skills makes a huge difference. How you manage people, how you manage crises. Do you collapse in a crisis, or do you exhibit real leadership? This is how you develop your corridor reputation, and this is how you get jobs. So this is one thing that I admire in the American system, is that we have this meritocracy, right? You get jobs based on numerous things. You get jobs based on language skills, based on regional expertise, based on past reputation, based on potential to perform at the higher level. That's how we basically get jobs. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for your speech. And you mentioned the 4 directions of American embassy work here. And I'm really interested in those methods used, those techniques and means that the American embassy applies here, especially in the first 2 spheres you mentioned. So it's anti-corruption policy and promoting human rights. So could you please elaborate?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'll start by telling you that, like any diplomatic corps, there is some work done publicly and there is some work done privately, right? So it is probably ill-advised to show all of your cards. It's ill-advised for us as diplomats to share in public everything that we tell the president or the prime minister or the minister of foreign affairs, because this is not how we develop trust, right? Let me tie 2 of the priorities. Moving from aid to trade and anti-corruption. Some people think that the US ambassador has the power to summon an American company, let's say Coca-Cola, right? And say, you need to go and invest in Armenia. This is not how our system works. Our system is a capitalistic system with the good and the bad that comes with it. And American companies are going to go and invest where there is a positive, healthy investment climate. Companies will go where there is transparency, where the rules of the game are clear. Companies do not want to go in an environment that is dominated by corruption, where everything is uncertain, and where the individual is stronger than the institution. Companies like structure, where the institution has its clear rules and laws. So if I were to send a big picture message, I would say that any country, whether it is Armenia or any other country, the United States, because you think we don't have corruption in the United States? Of course we do. Any country in the world suffers from corruption, but it's how you address it, how you deal with it. Most countries in the world actually have excellent laws on paper when it comes to dealing with corruption, but it is the application of these laws that becomes much trickier. So I would say, don't fight corruption as a country because the US Embassy or the EU or the Germans or the Brits or the French tell you to do it. That's not the right reason to do it. I think it's much more important to do it because you realize that corruption kills human potential. There are at least twice more Armenians who live outside of Armenia than who live inside of Armenia. And let me tell you, Armenians tend to do very well wherever they go. They tend to excel. So the human potential is definitely there. And what corruption does is that it kills that human potential in this climate, in this environment. One of the industries that Armenia is very famous for, not only in Armenia but also worldwide, is IT, information technology. You have some of the best minds in IT, and you have had it for multiple generations. This is nothing new. Is it a coincidence, you think, that the IT sector in Armenia is one of the sectors that is least impacted by corruption? I don't think it's a coincidence.
My question is about visas. By which criteria USA give visas, especially for tourists?
I see a very pragmatic question. The US Consular section gives tourist visas based, as you can well imagine, on our immigration laws. And our immigration laws basically make the assumption that any applicant for US visa is an intending immigrant until that applicant proves otherwise. So how do you prove otherwise? You know, some countries, they want to see an invitation letter. So you have an uncle in the United States who sends an invitation letter, says, Larissa is coming for 2 months for the summer, I will pay for everything. What you're doing here is that you're actually showing an attachment to the United States. What we want applicants to show are attachments to their country of origin that will compel them to come back, in this case to Armenia, after a short stay in the United States. So what you want to show is that you have a good reason to go to the United States, but that you will actually come back to Armenia, because after all, this is a tourist visa. Tourist, for most people, is a few weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months. It's not 4 years, right? So it's very simple. Show to the consul that you're coming back to Armenia. There are multiple ways to do that, but this is basically the logic that goes into obtaining the US visa.
Mr. Ambassador, yeah?
I wish. Thank you for the promotion. I will come to this university every week.
Chief of the International Department, Relations Department. United States intelligence sources have predicted that military escalation, conflict escalation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Do you share this view point. The first question. And second, United States allow the big war in this region. Thank you.
I'm sorry, the second question is?
United States will allow this big war in this country,
Okay.
in this region.
So the question is
Very
about,
provocative.
so the question is about the prospects of military escalation in the Nagorno-Karabakh area. As you can well imagine, I cannot talk about intelligence sources, etc. But I will tell you what the United States wants. It's clearly no military escalation. As you know, the United States is one of the 3 co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group. Whether Armenians and Azerbaijanis find it to be the most constructive mechanism or not, this is the mechanism that they chose together in order to attempt to resolve this conflict. I don't think it is in the interest of the United States. I don't think it is in the interest of Russia. I don't think it's in the interest of France, Armenia, or Azerbaijan to have military escalation. So this is definitely something that we do not want to see. And this is when I go back to my earlier question about what diplomacy is. There's a public angle to diplomacy, me speaking to you right now, and there's a private angle to diplomacy, whether it's at the level of presidents, at ministers of foreign affairs. And we realize that this conflict is not only about Armenia and Azerbaijan, but other parties are involved as well. Russia, France, Turkey, etc. So I can tell you that my government does everything that it can in order for there to be no military escalation and no war in this region, because it doesn't serve the interests of anyone.
Can I use the privilege of having the mic and continue with the question? We are celebrating 25 years of US-Armenia partnership. Could you please elaborate how you see the evolution of this partnership in these 25 years?
Thank you very much for raising this. This is actually a very special year for the relationship between the United States and Armenia, because it marks 25 years of establishment of diplomatic relations. By the way, the United States was the first country in the world to recognize Armenia's independence. And that's why when you look at red tags, diplomatic tags, if it's number 1, it's the United States. It's not because the United States is necessarily number 1, but it's because it's the first country that has recognized the independence of Armenia. Does anyone know what is the number for Russia? It's number 4. So it goes by order of recognition of Armenian independence. So 25 years establishment of diplomatic relations, 25 years of the establishment of our embassy here in Armenia, 25 years of the establishment of USAID. Are you familiar with what USAID is? The United States Agency for International Development. Does anyone know how much USAID alone has offered Armenia in assistance over the past 25 years? USAID alone, and I say alone because USAID is not the only entity in the US government that has offered Armenia assistance, has donated more than $1.1 billion in the past 25 years. And there's also 25 years on the establishment of the Peace Corps. And a lot of these Peace Corps volunteers are working in very remote villages in Armenia, whether they are teaching English, working on agriculture issues, etc. And this year we're actually celebrating 1,000 Peace Corps volunteers here in Armenia, so it's a special occasion for us. In terms of evolution, I would say that the most visible sign of evolution that both Americans and Armenians want to see is that transition from aid to trade. If you were to ask me, do you expect AID to donate billions and billions of dollars in the next 25 years here in Armenia? I would say that's probably not the healthiest sign, because it would show a lack of evolution. But we want that transition. We want more trade. there are almost 1 million Armenians who live in the United States, most of them in California, who have definitely become Americans, but who hold the motherland, Armenia, in a very special place in their hearts. We want to see more trade. We want to see Armenia adopt the kind of democratic reforms that its people deserve. We want to see Armenia take full advantage of its human potential here in Armenia. While Armenians excel all over the world, we want to see more and more Armenians excelling here in Armenia. So I think that's the kind of vision that both the United States and Armenia share for the next 25 years.
We have another question.
Well, thank you, first of all, for your thought-provoking answers to our sometimes tricky questions. And you mentioned that this year is 25 years of establishing relations between America and Armenia. It's 25 years of establishing the Embassy of America here in Armenia. And judging by the size of the embassy, well, America is really interested in Armenia. And I would rather put my question really simply. Could you please tell us, well, maybe in public lecture context, why does the US need Armenia so much?
By the way, he's Russian in descent and has learned Armenian here, so he's not Armenian.
Whether you're Russian or Armenian, the answer is the same. You know, diplomacy, at least the American mentality, is not about a zero-sum game. You know, a lot has been said about the size of the American embassy here, and you know, especially if you go on Russian websites, they make a big deal out of the size of the American embassy here. And yes, it is larger than the Russian embassy. But what does that mean? It's a piece of land that the Armenian government has basically indicated for us. And if you come and visit our embassy, what you will notice is that most of the land is actually dedicated to an athletic field where people can play soccer, they can play tennis, basketball, where children come and celebrate their birthdays. There's a playground. So it's a large embassy, but it's very welcoming in that sense. It's not all offices and people. No, in terms of number of personnel, it's nowhere near as large as our embassy in Russia or our embassy in Iraq or in Egypt or in China, right? I don't know what the word needs mean. Why does the United States need Armenia so much? I don't think it's a relationship based on need. I think it's a relationship that's based on partnership. It's a relationship that's based on the almost 1 million Armenians who live in the United States. There are maybe, 2 million Armenians who live in Russia?
1.5
billion. The United States is the second largest country, and France is probably the third largest country. So I don't think of it in terms of these zero-sum games. We need, we don't need. It's much more complex, I would say, and I would also argue that it's a partnership. It's a region of the world where volatility is unwelcome. It serves the interests, as I said before, of Russia. It serves the interest of the United States to have a stable South Caucasus. So this is why we're here. This is why we'll continue to be here.
Thank you very much for your very interesting speech. And I want to ask about blacklist. If I'm not mistaken, the US Embassy presents every year blacklist which Armenian citizens are included. And I want to ask about criteria which are took into account when you decide.
I'm sorry, you want to ask about what?
Blacklist.
Okay. One of the first things I learned at the National War College, where you study strategy, is be careful with your assumption. Because if your assumption is mistaken, your strategy is completely off. So once again, the real life of diplomacy is less exciting than the James Bond 007 portrayal in the media of blacklists, etc. I've heard that term many times, actually, since I've been here. And every time I wonder, where is that list? But here's what I will tell you. The United States Embassy is keen to honor and respect the US taxpayers' money. We say in America that there are two certainties in life, only two: taxes and death. You will pay taxes, and one day you will die. It's simple. So we respect our taxpayers' money. If there is an Armenian, an Albanian, an Azerbaijani, a Turk, a French, a Sudanese who has committed violent abuses of human rights, we will take that into consideration when it comes to granting that person a scholarship or sending them on an exchange program where we use the US taxpayers' money. I think it's only reasonable.
For visiting our university, and I would like to ask a question. I think you are aware that a few days ago in America, near the house of Ambassador of Turkey, there was the bodyguards of Recep Erdogan beat our demonstrators. What is your decision about this, and why American police officers didn't do anything? They were like just watching it. Why?
Very good question, very timely question. Once again, I will go to say that there are two things. There's the public reaction, and then there's the private reaction. In this case, actually, they happen to coincide. Have you seen the statement that the US State Department has issued about this incident? How did you like it? What did it say?
I don't remember.
Okay, you don't remember, but I will refresh your memory. What the statement by the State Department said was a condemnation of the behavior of the bodyguards of the Turkish leader. You have seen a tweet by Senator McCain, perhaps one of the most distinguished senators in the United States, where he said, "This is the United States of America. We don't do that." There are some other public manifestations of displeasure and criticism. I will also tell you that privately, the Turkish ambassador was summoned, and we have explained our discontent to the Turkish ambassador. By the way, this is a very strong reaction by any government to the visit of a foreign leader. So I think that it was addressed properly. And the question is, did it serve or did it hurt the image of the Turkish leader abroad? I will let you answer that question. Thank you very much for giving me this chance to come and speak to you. One thing I will leave you with, as you have seen, is at the age of whatever you are, 20, 21, 22, 25, you are clearly much better prepared for a career in diplomacy or international affairs than I ever was when I was your age. So let the sky be your limit, and may your success be second only to your happiness. Thank you very much.